Marcus Vega Doesn't Speak Spanish is a story of a child who visits the beautiful island of Puerto Rico with his mother and younger brother. However, once there, he decides to find his father, who walked out 10 years prior to the story. The author of this wonderful book is an award-winning writer, Pablo Cartaya. Welcome.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you so much
Nice
for
to
joining
see you.
us. A children's book. Tell us about that.
Well, children's books cover a wide range. They go from picture books all the way to young adult novels. This particular one is what would be considered an upper middle grade, because the main character is 14, about to be 15 years old. But children's books, to my mind anyway, it's the gateway to
knowledge.
It's really the gateway to readers, right? To future readers. So if they have access to a book at an early age, the chances are that they're going to be lovers of books as adults.
Exactly.
Is pretty high. And so for me, writing a book like this one is to give not just kids, but kids who come from other cultures, another culture, who speak another language, to be able to give them access to a story that they feel seen inside of. You see what I'm saying?
Now, Pablo, you are an actor as well as a writer. How do you juggle from one career to the other?
Well, you should see me writing at home. It's really quite funny because I oftentimes play out the characters.
Oh wow!
In my out loud, or my dog is hilariously just watching me. Just like, what is he doing right now?
Acting and writing.
And I think, and I write very visually as well. So I have the scenes play out in my head as if they were filmed.
Wow.
And so I write it that way. And so and then when I give presentations or I go and I speak at conferences or something, or things like that, or I speak at schools, it's very performative.
Wow.
And so both are very united.
So where do you draw your inspiration from when it comes to writing?
I draw my inspiration, honestly, from the stories that I wish I had as a kid. I rarely saw myself in the stories. I'm Cuban American, but I never saw the Latinx character in stories that I read as a child. And when I became an adult and I started realizing how little representation there was, I found myself wanting to write stories that represent Latinx characters, but also people of color, and so that a child can read this and say, I see myself there.
Absolutely. Now, you emphasize the world of bilinguals a lot in this book and in your talking.
All my books.
Do you think it's important to speak more than one language?
Oh, goodness, yes. Yeah. I mean, we have this thing, that happens with there's speaking another language has suddenly become a bad word around some parts, It's like, why would you speak another language? But the reality is, the founding fathers of this country were bilinguals.
Absolutely.
They were immigrants.
There's so many cultures in this country.
And so many cultures have fed this country and made it what it is. So it's, so the idea that somehow speaking another language is somehow a bad thing is silly to me.
It's not at all. In this book, you also show us how Puerto Rico was before Hurricane Maria.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's so important to know Puerto Rico before the hurricane?
Well, I struggled with this because the last visit that I did was last August, and I did a tour around where the places are in the book, and I start off in Viejo San Juan, and in the novel they start in Viejo San Juan, which is Old San Juan, and then they travel up through into the interior, right around Orocovis, which is the mountainous region. There's a lot of farms there, and then they make the trip back down towards Manatí. But I was really fascinated on this last trip because I wanted to check all the places, just get a final push to wrap up the book.
So you've traveled to all these places that are in the book. Wow, that's amazing.
And I happened upon a little art shop that was tucked away in the side of the mountain in this area called Guavate, which, by the way, if you ever are in Puerto Rico, I encourage you to go to Guavate. There's a highway.
That's on my list.
It's called Pork Highway, La Ruta del Lechon. And there's these little lechoneros tucked all along the side of the mountain roads, and you can just eat pork, and you have coco frios, and there's music playing. It's amazing. But anyway, I digress. But tucked in the side of this mountain was this little art shop. And, you know, we got out because I wanted to see. And a lot of the artwork was arte hecho en Guavate. So it's this art made by artists in Guavate. And I just love this idea of like hecho en Puerto Rico, hecho en Guavate, in the regions, right? And I talked to this lady who owned the shop, and I told her what I was doing, and she was very excited for me. And she gives me this little statue of a man, and he's sitting on a piece of coral, and it's a tiny little statue, maybe this big. And he's sitting on a coral, and he's reading a book. Wow. And he's got a spear on the side, like kind of leaning on the side of the coral. And she says, el escritor que escribe sabe usar sus palabras para fajar. So the writer who writes knows how to use his words to fight. And she goes, go finish your book.
Yeah.
And, you know, later that evening, we're sitting outside, and of course the magical coqui frogs, it's like, you know, singing out in the night, and I just felt everything was put together. Perfect. It just felt right. And then 3 weeks later, the hurricane hit. And devastated the island. And I called friends and eventually got in touch, and some family members, but I couldn't find this lady.
Remember that the 35th Miami Book Fair begins Sunday, November 11, and ends with the Weekend Street Fair extravaganza beginning Friday, November 16th until Sunday, November 18th. This is an event for the entire family.